So just as a you know heads up for people, Sam's had a really long day, and if you want to send him some love, he's at Sam Calcio on Twitter. Okay, you can
Thanks,
reach
man.
out at
Thanks,
Noizze
man.
Podcast on Twitter, on Instagram. Send your love for Sam. Tagline or subject if you want to email in to info@noizze.co.uk is wake up Sam, and obviously then your messages and pictures of anything that might make him feel better. So anything satanic usually sort of just chirps him up a little bit. Yeah, just reach out. We'll have a number and a thing at the end as well if you want to support. What's up, everyone? You're listening to the Noizze Podcast, sponsored by Stereo Brain Records and brought to you on the Noizze Podcast Network. And today, we're reviewing the split EP by Alpha Wolf and Holding Absence, The Lost and the Longing, as well as the debut album Beautiful Dangerous from Heart of Gold, which is the side project of Michael McGough from Being as an Ocean. And if that wasn't enough, Sam interviews Mau, organiser of AMFest in Barcelona, with a cracking lineup including Cult of Luna, Svalbard and Palbera. They managed to talk about everything from the festival's inception, its organisation, pricing, the pandemic, etc., etc. It's a really cool insight into festival. Be sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and wherever you stream your podcasts. That can include Spotify and Apple Music. Make sure you check us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Noizze Podcast, at Noizze Podcast Network. Make sure to follow Noizze UK on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And if you're feeling extra generous, you could even drop us a review. Enjoy the episode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Noizze Podcast. I'm once again joined by Jack Holloway. We're going to be discussing a few bits and bobs today. I'm looking forward to it. How are you, sir?
I'm very good. Thank you, Sam. You'll hear us coming across. Do you know what? You did the clap for that then, and the pop shield must be so good that you've added that I didn't even hear the clap my end.
Oh, that's cool.
It's really cool. I mean, editing Jack will find it a nightmare, but podcast Jack loves that.
Big time win for Pod Jack. I'm a big time
Pod
loss
Jack's
for production.
on top.
Production Jack's just crying in a corner.
Yeah. He's not happy, Jack. How are you though, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Looking forward to another episode to discuss some music with you. So today we're going to be talking about two records. We're going to be discussing the Holding Absence Alpha Wolf combination collaboration EP. And we are also going to be discussing an album by a band called Heart of Gold. Given your expertise on both subjects, I'm going to be passing over to you for the majority of this, specifically the first one, because I feel like your history with Holding Absence is becoming like a brotherly tapestry at this stage. You're just in the background of all major moments in their life. It seems like that, like some guy trying to piece together a murder trial, and you're just the lead suspect because you keep appearing in every photo. It's just like, why is that guy in the bathroom all the time? So that's what we're doing. So I'm going to pass over to you. Talk to us about this Alpha Wolf Holding Absence collaboration.
I mean, very quickly before I do, we've also got and before we dive into that, your interview is going to follow that, which you did today. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I spoke to a man called Mau, who runs the AM Festival in Barcelona, that's enjoying I think it's 11th or 12th consecutive year, barring the pandemic. And they're running a new venue for the festival at, let's get this right, La Farga La Hospitalet, or La Hospitalet, I think is the pronunciation. He said it and it just rolled off the tongue. I'm sure you're familiar with the feeling of just being just listening to people speaking Spanish, just thinking, how the fuck do you make everything sound so cool?
Cool.
Yeah, it's just a real problem, isn't it? Anyway, so they're running a festival that's got bands such as Cult of Luna, Svalbard, Palbera, a whole host of other really cool post-metal and prog rock bands. And he was talking about how the festival came about, what they're looking to do, how it happened in the pandemic, the artists, all that good stuff. Should be a sick festival as well. October in Spain. I mean, ideal
And Noise will be
circumstance,
there
really.
from what I gather. I think
Yeah,
I think both Will and Dan are going to be going, which is just the coolest thing, man. Uh,
yeah, they
m-
deserve to be able to go over there as well. That would be so fantastic. I
yeah, mind
by the
blowing.
way, do you even remotely love the image as much as I do of Dan Hillier, just like in a Hawaiian shirt, wandering around Spain,
Just
trying to find like
metaling it up.
yeah,
Big up Dan
just trying to
Hillier
find cigarettes just everywhere.
and
Yeah,
metal. I'm here for
yeah,
cigarettes and metal, and I
absolutely.
found one of
I'm
them.
thoroughly love the idea of that. Just yeah, just two resident Grebos just kicking it in Spain. I just think it's phenomenal. Anyway, what an interesting idea this was to bring these two bands together. Feels like a real iPod shuffle type scenario. How did this come about?
Um, it's funny, isn't it? Because I mean, Holding Absence are no stranger to a collaboration. So those that will cast their minds back, that will remember the split EP with Loathe and what that did for the band before their debut. Um, and I think that lays the groundwork for just their kind of creative ability, which is spurred on by Sharp Tone Records. I think they're just a label that just really get it. They get thrown ideas and they'll take them up. They're really sort of creative as a label and give the freedom to do so. And I remember the band talking about that at that time and being able to just float an idea that to most would probably seem insane, but you know, that's where they were before. And then when you come around to this and they're looking for something to do creatively again, and they're looking at sort of label mates and who might do it, I think it came about quite organically. And it's Alpha Wolf and Holding Absence, and you know, it's two, it's not different worlds, is it? But in terms of within that scene and within that genre, they're two completely different bands stylistically, aren't they? And what you've got is this melting pot of sort of different influences and some of the staple sounds from the bands with, you know, just a clear sort of, I think, you know, they had quite a clear direction with what they were trying to do with it. And you know, you've got a very clear Alpha Wolf song, a very clear Holding Absence song, and then the two tracks in between are kind of really interesting melds of their sort of sounds, I guess, yet still sound somewhat staple to each of the bands. So yeah, I mean that's kind of, it's just one of those things that's just dropped out of nowhere, and I hope will sort of um you know, paint the picture for what might come next for each of the bands. I mean, as a massive Alpha Wolf fan, you must feel like you've at least got something out of it, because Hotel Underground is an absolute ripper.
Yeah, a massive fan of both 60 centimeters of steel and Hotel Underground.
Oh,
Which I no longer have any anxiety about what the next Alpha Wolf album is going to sound like, because I feel like I got
none at all.
a sneak preview of the sort of sound that they're going to be rooting for, and you know what, it sounds refreshingly like A Quiet Place to Die, which was just absolutely sensational. And I'm actually wearing the evidence of it at the moment. I just absolutely adore that album and that band. But what was interesting is that I didn't actually anticipate it being constructed this way. I actually thought it would be a full EP of collaboration style songs. I didn't actually expect them to be separating them into different camps, which I actually think is really clever and is the best way to go about it, because as evidenced by myself and you, I'm more of one camp, and I would assume that you're more one of the other. And it gave you the option to sort of dive in at your leisure and experience this collaboration kind of how you wanted to, rather than sort of just being forced to sort of experience these things being meshed together. So for me, for example, the two Alpha Wolf solo tracks are just fucking phenomenal. The picking riff at the start of 60 centimeters of steel, the light and dark combination of what they've created here is just classic Alpha Wolf, and I'm absolutely in love with it. The
What
breakdown at
did
the end of that
you
song is just
what
unbelievable.
did you think of Lucas's feature on 60 centimeters of steel?
I liked it. I liked that it added a little bit of like a sort of like a I don't know, like a sort of alternative dynamic that sort of allows it to sort of swap between the sort of different vibes of the band. I thought it was interesting. I thought it offered a sort of a unique addition that obviously no Alpha Wolf song is ever going to have, probably before or since. Obviously, as I'm a huge metal fan, it didn't necessarily, I wasn't something that I sort of thought that it was vital necessarily or crucial to my enjoyment of the track, but I'm not entirely sure that it's there for that either. When you listen to when you listen to Hotel Underground, it's just
How
just
angry is that song?
just brilliant, just absolutely fan fucking tastic. Just dark, heavy, up tempo, punching, throttling, just absolutely relentless music that they've become known for. And it's thoroughly phenomenal. And then you hear the lead single, Aching Longing, which is the real collaboration song, which I imagine was the sort of centerpiece of the EP. Now, obviously, I would have wished it was Alpha Wolf featuring Holden Absence, but for the purposes of it, he's definitely Holden Absence featuring Alpha Wolf, isn't it? Like Alpha Wolf just darken the edges of what really. I wonder if you'll agree, Jack. Really, this is a Holden Absence song, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that was the intention. I think the intention was that because Hotel Underground is an Alpha Wolf song, Coffin is a Holding Absence song, and then Aching Longing is the Holding Absence featuring Alpha Wolf, and then 60 Centimeters of Steel is Alpha Wolf featuring Holding Absence. So I think that was entirely intentional that it was their song with a feature from Alpha Wolf rather than it being something that is kind of a mesh of the two almost. I almost feel like that collaboration, I don't even know if it would work or whether they had enough time. Who knows what the logistics were? Maybe, I don't know. It could have been a you send us your track, we'll feature, we'll send you ours, you feature kind of thing. I think you're absolutely right on the first two tracks though, and I like the way that it sort of the way that it's put together feels really good. It feels like it goes from that bludgeoning heaviness, aching longing sets it, sort of bridges the gap a little bit, and then Coffin is obviously very different to anything else on the EP anyway. But yeah, I loved it. It had that. I think the thing that set it apart was it less of that kind of bludgeoning metal groove that Alpha Wolf have, and more of that, swaps that out almost for that atmospheric sort of really sort of those sounds that just seem to soar, the Holding Absence are just really tightly grasped. And then the feature just heavies it up a little bit. I mean, personally, for me, it's really cool to see Holding Absence go a step into a sort of zone where they wouldn't normally. The band have very rarely sort of, you haven't seen Lucas like sort of dive into his heavier vocals as much, and he does on his feature and on Aching Longing a little bit. It sort of centers around more of those screaming vocals less than it does of the kind of the cleans and the highs that you'd usually hear. And I think up until that point, they hit really, really hard. I guess the what I feel will be the standout track of the EP, I guess, is Coffin. And I'm really interested to hear what you think of it before I tell you what I think of it.
Okay. I think it's a classic Holden Absence song in the sense that it's got that pop sensibility that runs right through it. They appear to have mastered the art of the post-rock chorus. The way that they're able to start off with this sort of slow, kind of half electronic, maybe a little bit of synth, maybe a little bit of piano, sort of knocking around introduction. They're able to write songs that really display their strengths, which I imagine for the majority of their audience is Lucas's voice, Lucas's lyricisms. He's the star of the show. There's no point debating it, and they successfully center songs around his skill set. And this is another example of that. I can see these types of songs, not necessarily this one necessarily, because it's associated with Alpha Wolf. I think it would need to be something that's on a Holding Absence solo song for really to sort of solo album to sort of really go further for them. But I can really see a world where these are the types of songs that sort of propel them into a different kind of stratosphere Um, it's not my favorite song on the album. It's not my favorite Hold an Absence song, but I can recognize its usefulness and I can recognize its value for the band and for their audience. I assume you fell in love with it within 7 seconds, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
obviously.
did. I don't know why when I said that and felt weirdly guilty, it reminded me of that opening spiel that you did that basically painted me as a band groupie that they don't know about and a complete creep. But worded it so well that it came across in a really nice way that I was almost proud to be that, you know,
Mm.
which is an interesting one for me, an interesting set of emotions that I've run through there. Yeah, I mean, I loved it. I mean, but it's important for us to say that going in, it's very much going to be more in my ballpark than it is yours in terms of what we like stylistically. I love this EP for the fact that I love that both bands are just happy to be creative. I'm happy that they're on a label where it's like you said, and like the discussion that we've had before about bands, you can take what they've done and love what they've done. Sometimes they might throw out something that you don't like as much, or that feels a little bit different, or I'd rather have that thing than not have that thing. You know, here you get to hear an Alpha Wolf track that has a little bit of melody on it and does something a little bit different. And the likelihood is that the next album that you're going to hear from Alpha Wolf is just going to be bludgeoningly heavy and ridiculously metalcore with
And I
breakdowns
can't
and
wait.
beatdowns aplenty, and
Can't
it's going
wait.
to be a beautiful, beautiful thing. Likewise, if you're a Holding Absence fan, you get to hear stylistically them moving to sort of areas where they wouldn't normally do so. And it's interesting in terms of what Coffin could do for them in terms of growth and a sign of where we might be going to next with the band, because for the Holding Absence low split, you saw the song Saint Cecilia. Completely, the two bands, particularly it was back when Low were really at their heaviest as well, and the songs that they put out were ridiculously heavy, and the Holding Absence ones were far lighter, and that sort of set the tone for what was then to come. And it kind of feels like Coffin might do a bit of that. They've gone quite classic, anthemic alt rock on their last album, and this kind of, to me, seems like they might be shifting towards a little bit of really sort of doubling down on those pop sensibilities and not being afraid to sort of throw the electronic side of things into it as well. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It kind of, Coffin sounds stylistically similar to when they put out those two tracks. I think it was Birdcage and Gravity. And it's got that sort of vibe to it. But it's sick. I mean, it's just, I feel like the EP is a bit of here's a taster board for potentially what we might have coming up, but also some cool midpoint stuff that we've both got going on. Uh, and that feels like a great thing. Anything
Yeah,
else on
it's
that,
just
Sam?
no. I was just gonna say it's lovely to have these bands producing music consistently, and whatever version of that music comes about, it's a benefit to us all from whatever side of the fandom that you're from. And it's cool that they're working together. I like it when bands do that. It's cool when bands collaborate, offers an interesting perspective on stuff, it offers a different dynamic type of music. Maybe it hints that Hold an Absence will have some of their songs tinged with a little bit of darkness, and maybe it hints that Alva Wolf in moving forward are open at least to the idea of melodic numbers and things like that. If they can see versions of their music that actually have this kind of pop sensibility, then that's not necessarily a bad thing for anybody involved, and shows the versatility of both. And I think that's a good thing and is worth celebrating within the industry. Should we move? Should we move forward, Jack? Heart of Gold.
If anyone hasn't noticed yet, Sam's had a really long, busy day as well. And whilst I'm talking, and I can see you just working your way through this and holding back yawns, Sam, is actually making me like try not to laugh as I'm as I'm talking. So just as a, so just as a you know heads up for people, Sam's had a really long day, and if you want to send him some love, he's at Sam Calcio on Twitter. Okay, you can
Thanks,
reach
man.
out at
Thanks,
Noizze
man.
Podcast on Twitter, on Instagram. Send your love for Sam. Tagline or subject if you want to email in to info@noizze.co.uk is wake up Sam, and obviously then your messages and pictures of anything that might make him feel better. So anything satanic usually sort of just chirps him up a little bit. Yeah, just reach out. We'll have a number and a thing at the end as well if you want to support Sam.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's nice when
Which moves me brilliantly on to Heart of Gold, the loosest segue in the history of segues. Heart of Gold is the solo project of one Michael McGough, from Being as an Ocean. So when I told you earlier that Chris was very fond of this from the review I've read that will be going out on Noizze at some point, probably now makes a little bit more sense to you. It's his, as far as I'm aware, it's his solo project, but he does have a band behind him, but I'm not sure on the entire logistics of that. But it is absolutely the brainchild and the project of Michael. He's been going at it for some time. There's been 2 EPs to date. And I think the last EP he put out kind of set the tone for what this album might sound like. It's an album called Beautiful and Dangerous. It's out on Friday, on August 12th. And if you haven't heard them before and you're about to dive in, whatever your preconceptions are from me saying Being as an Ocean, throw them all out, because that's not what this sounds like at all. If you're a fan of Mike McGough and his kind of melodies and his vocal delivery, and have kind of always said, "Oh, pop that in a bottle for me and throw it into a completely new genre. Let's see how that sounds." Then this was for you, and I think also entirely for me as well, as a fan of pop sensibilities, 80s influenced, 90s influenced pop music. I think this is right up my street. Sam, how did you feel about this? How are you feeling? Are you still with us? And what's your initial thoughts before I dot through a track by track?
All right, okay. So I'm gonna start by saying that please temper any part of this review with the knowledge that I am not the intended audience, and I knew that going in. Okay, there is no version of this necessarily. I wasn't a big fan of Being as an Ocean. I'm not really a big fan of this kind of synth heavy sort of kind of half pop punk, half traditional pop music sort of machination that I'm getting here. So I will start by saying that. My feelings listened towards this, I'll be honest. I started off thinking this is all right, it's okay. I don't mind that this is happening to me. This is all right. Sort of like going to the dentist. It was very atmospheric. Yeah, and I was like, I'm not a massive fan of the vocoding. I think it's being overused a touch. I quite like it's a bit atmospheric. It's got a decent sort of pop sensibility. My only issue is that I found myself having that take a lot because a lot of the songs follow the same vein. Structurally, the same blueprint, almost it seems the same chord patterns, man. Like that's my issue, removing the fact that it's not for me. Just trying to look at it objectively, right? I thought it was a bit repetitive, Jack. I'm not going to lie to you. I feel that you could swap a lot of these songs with other songs in the other points of the record. Wouldn't make a great deal of difference. There was a lot of filler tracks that felt like just sort of like previews to next songs, but then the next song itself wouldn't take off with the gravity that I was hoping for. It felt like he had a similar style that he was pushing, which, if you are into, then you're going to like all of it because it follows that consistent thread. It's just within 2 or 3 to 4 minutes, I decided I didn't quite like the song that I was listening to, not realizing that the song was actually going to be about 38 minutes long.
That's not bad for you, Sam. And I mean, it is important to say, isn't it? Like you've already sort of, started with anyway. This album is something that's very much in my wheelhouse, and I threw at Sam as a kind of, as you've done with me with black metal and death and a little bit of the the places that
Yeah,
I've
it's more of a
dived
social
in so far.
experiment.
Yeah, I mean, just to sort of I mean, you're not wrong in terms of the kind of what you're getting on this album, really. If you're looking for pop melodies, hooky choruses, um, a sort of prominence of synth wave with those kind of small intricacies and intonations of, various influences from the 80s to the 90s to different sort of pop tracks over the years. That's exactly what you're going to get. You dive a little bit deeper into that, and there's some good lyricism here. A lot of the time it's kind of, the message can be, the songs are so layered, multi-layered in terms of what they include in it. There's always a really positive feel. So if the song's about something that is a little bit sadder, it kind of gets a little bit lost because you can't help but just want to bop to it. And it is almost that 40, however many minutes, 48 minutes or something like that, of bop. Like that's exactly what you're going to get. If you were looking for an album that you just wanted to put on in the car, wind the windows down in weather like we've had today, and go for a 50-minute drive, you are going to have the best time. It's going to be great. There was some cool bits in here, and some real highlights for me. I think if you're a fan of Dayseeker, another band that Chris absolutely loves, vocalist from there, Rory Rodriguez, does a solo project called Hurt Wave. It sounds very, very similar. It seems like when you've got a vocalist that can hit those sorts of highs and meld that sort of post-hardcore sound that both bands do, it's kind of both of those. It's intriguing that both those vocalists have gone in a very similar way to sort of almost embrace that kind of hugely poppy side to almost get it out of their systems almost. And it's funny, lots of bands are doing this sort of thing, and I actually think not carrying it off as well as Heart of Gold has done. I actually think that in terms of production and polishing and how this actually sounds, I think it's a brilliant album. Busted tried it, they didn't do a very good job. I love a band called Beach Weather, which is the sort of side project of a Rocket to the Moon vocalist. And then you've got bands like 1975, Haim, and The Weeknd that are all doing this sort of thing as well.
I can't believe you've invited me on a podcast where one of your defenders of a band is that Busted did this worse.
Bro, like, you don't be dissing Busted on this podcast, mate.
No, if that's our starting point, it's.
Yeah, but it was a sick album. I just think this one's done better.
Okay, continue.
Have you heard the album? I mean,
no. That's why I said continue. I'm not gonna beat up a straw man that I don't know anything about.
I mean, this isn't trying to be anything other than what it is either. It's very shamelessly a pop record. It's not trying to be this edgy kind of. It's doing very much like what I said, like what the 1975 have done. You'd probably cite that as one of the biggest four fans of.
Oh God, yeah,
definitely. And other artists that are just in the cultural zeitgeist at the moment are all doing that sort of thing, and you find that trend with music, don't you? That just as one thing sort of moves away from the other, then some of the old influences of old come back in, as you'll tell us with every song that's influenced by Bruce Springsteen, because it's as we spoke about over the weekend, it's most of them. But yeah, I thought there was some real highlights on it. I thought that it did well to balance the pop punk sort of sensibilities. You can hear he's from an alternative background in that sense, but mixed it with all of his kind of what I assume to be his influences and how they've sort of melded together. It very much feels like his project in that sense, and something that he poured absolutely everything into. I think the likes of Bright Lights, which was very 1975, Leave Just Yet, and there was another one in there as well, Bad Habit, they kind of pop in throughout, and I think they're the lifts that the album absolutely needed. I think I agree with you on some of the other tracks there. They sort of meld into one another a little bit, and you're kind of searching out for the specific hooks or some small sort of inflection of sound or something that he's done slightly differently. The tempo sort of doesn't really waver from song to song. It just sort of this kind of casual wave. I did like the interlude tracks on it. I thought they were nice breakups. I like the way that the titles flow with one another, and I like that I actually stopped and played them one after the other, and they kind of merge into one sort of atmospheric, epic sort of track between them. I thought they broke it up nicely. You can kind of tell they were to break up the sort of, I guess, what you were touching upon, which is the sort of monotony of the songs playing one after the other. But yeah, I mean, for me, yeah, it was kind of entirely what you have said it would be, or what you kind of thought it would be, except it's for me. And I guess that's kind of what it comes down to. I mean, give me a bit of a synopsis. What are you've kind of touched on some of the tracks, but what were your thoughts on the album in general?
It's atmospheric, it's emotive. It's got a lot going for it with like a sort of a pop melody kind of way. It's beautifully mixed and recorded. I'll give it that. It's beautifully mixed and recorded. It's put together in this very sort of natural, weirdly organic feeling record, despite the fact that there's a lot of electronics going on. It just feels really nice to listen to from that standpoint. Just quality is just tip top. But I just felt that the sort of like the waving, cascading pop melodies just sort of knocking on each other was, a little bit repetitive after a while.
There was some variance towards the end of the album. There was the track Home Time that came after Backseat Daydream, which was another one of those that was kind of sort of, you could tell was one of the singles. But Home Time was a little bit more stripped back, and it felt a little bit like a lot of that, the sort of the overlayering of those kind of electro synthwave type sounds had been taken back, and it felt a little bit more melancholic. It felt a little bit more thought-provoking. It kind of made me think about the lyricism a little bit more, and that's what I touched upon at the start, that some of it seems a little bit masked by how much you've got going on. And actually that track was one of the standouts for me, because you really heard it, but not only did you hear it, you felt it. So it's got some real promise in that sense. It shows some variance, albeit in a very short sort of in just one of the songs on the album. And I felt a little bit like that on the closer as well. I can't remember what the closing one was called. Time Spent Driving, which is, I told you it was a summer driving song. But yeah, I mean, it took a little bit more time to not just kick straight into 80s overload, and instead sort of there was a really clear intro, a bit more of a sort of build up, where it sort of inclusion of instruments and things, and then sort of work to its crescendo. It felt like a closer for an album, but it also felt like something slightly different to what we'd heard. So that back half of the album, there was a couple of songs on there that actually felt a little bit different.
I've definitely gone for atmospheric over anthemic, and it succeeded. It succeeded in that. I think if you like synthwave, if you like expansive electronic music, and you like his voice, like Chris does, you're going to be predisposed to like it. It did sound like he's sort of writing songs over a theme, like a long theme over the course of the album, rather than specifics. It does feel like an album that would really fit nicely in the background of another activity, such as driving or gaming or whatever like that. In fact, some of the songs sound like they could be on the next FIFA soundtrack and stuff. It's got that kind of poppy electronic soundtrack that I've always kind of rooted for, and that's no criticism. It's just what came into my head while I was listening to it. Obviously, like I said, I'm not the market for it, but at no point does he write any of this aimed at me. So no one should be surprised. I can't imagine the fellows who've been behind this are particularly disappointed that I don't like it that much. It's absolutely fine. But for those who are fans of Being as an Ocean, those who are fans of this type of music, I think you can get a lot out of it. And clearly, One of those people is you, and the other one of those people is Chris, who appears to have enjoyed it as well. So I'm clearly in the minority on that one.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're looking for an album that's easily digestible, has great hooks and beautiful melody, you like an album that you can put on and roll the windows down and embrace your, inner road trip, then you're in absolutely the right place. And check out Beautiful Dangerous. It's out on Friday. And over to you to close it, Sal.
Thank you very much, Jack, for that delightful review. Okay, that closes an episode of the Noizze podcast. I really hope you enjoyed listening to it. Thank you to everybody that contributed the music that allowed us to talk about it. Please give us a follow at Noizze Podcast Network on Twitter, at Noizze UK on Twitter, at Noizze UK on YouTube, Noizze Podcast Network on Spotify or wherever you happen to get your podcasts, please. Please give us a like and subscribe in all the relevant places. Please drop us individually. Follow us on any of your relevant social medias, including Facebook, Instagram, Noizze Podcast Network, and Noizze UK on those respectively. Please get in touch, comment on any relevant YouTube stuff, what you think of the album, how full of shit you think I am that I don't like this, etc.
Don't forget to cheer Sam up as well. We need to really root around Sam here.
The thing is no, stop it.
Twitter.
Stop it. The thing is that this is that you can't do this because you have 1.5 children, a full-time job that you woke up early this morning to go to, and yet here you are rallying around me, who just had a busy afternoon in the midst of a summer holiday, and I'm moody as fuck about it. Don't make me to be some kind of martyr, because the guilt I'm going to feel if even one singular person tweets in feeling sorry for me for having to spend an afternoon doing things and got a bit rushed and maybe a little bit flustered when I'm literally, my co-host has a 4-year-old little girl asleep at the moment, a fucking heavily pregnant wife next to her, presumably asleep at the moment, and a job and a career as well, none of which are my concern until September the 5th. If that was your intent to sort of like reverse jinx me into fucking feeling okay.
You've said all of this.
I know what your fucking plan is here, Holloway. I can see it. You piece of shit.
We've been the Noizze Podcast.
Oh, follow us, please.
On all of it.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Jesus Christ.
Dear. Stick around as you're about to listen to Sam's interview with Mau of AMFest. Check it out.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Noizze Podcast. I am here with a very special guest here. It's Mau from AMFest. How are you today, sir? How's life treating you?
Great. How is it going, Sam?
Not too bad at all. Now, you are about to run from the 6th to the 9th of October, a very special festival. Why don't you tell the readers and the listeners a little bit about AMFest, the history and where it's got to and what we're doing this year?
So AMFest was born in 2013 as the 10th anniversary of the Allowed Music label. You might know the label for bands like Exosense or Tundra or Jardín de la Cura, all the bands that have been playing our tangents over the past years. That was meant to be a one-off, but it went so well, and the team felt so good about it that decided to keep it going. So it turned into a festival rather than a party. Mm-hmm. Kept growing, the team kept growing, and it became I think we're going for the 10th edition this year. We had to change venue 2-3 times because Barcelona is not a place that makes things too easy for some kind of event. So this year we're switching venue again. We're going to L'Hospitalet, which is literally the next town close to Barcelona, still Barcelona, of course. And probably the most ambitious edition ever with the lineup. We're going to discuss. Been waiting for 2 years as well. Other events. Our brothers at Art Tangent as well. And yeah, we're very excited. It's a mad summer, so we're all still involved in other personal projects and, festivals, tours, and we started working at, production and logistics and all the pre-prod just, a few weeks ago, and very excited.
That's phenomenal. So what actually goes on in terms of the preparation, in terms of the moving the venues this year? Bearing in mind the pandemic has sort of hit you guys, haven't done this for sort of, this is like a 3-year project at this point. I remember seeing you put in the email. How does all that come together over such a long period of time?
I mean, in 2020, it was meant to take place at the former venue we were doing the festival. We've been doing the festival for the last 2 years, so 2018 and 2019. Then some houses were built next to this venue. So DB limit, curfew limits that were just, undoable. So we had this, 2 years to look and find for another venue. Most of the lineup was meant to be that one in 2020 as well. So, Cult of Luna, Caspian, and, the likes of some big names. We've been, reconfirming them for 2 years. I know this must sound familiar to many festival organizers. And yeah, it's challenging because, we got the biggest lineup ever in a new venue. So in terms of, sounds and logistics and dressing rooms and, stage, where you actually put the stages, because this is a venue that's, is a multi-purpose venue. So they do the comics festival, or they do the beer festival, and then you can actually do a music festival. So the good thing is, we can do it, we can make the space, we can tailor it, following our needs, and because the venue is huge, so we'll be able to customize it and make it the best experience, as good as possible for you guys, because you're coming, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm going to try and get there as often as I possibly can. October in Barcelona, get out of here, of course.
Yeah, that's one of the baits we have for people outside Spain, is October, Barcelona. I
mean, it's just a beautiful idea. That's actually, you touched on something I want to get onto there. So you mentioned, even in some of the email notes, sort of going back and forth, organise the interview and stuff like that, that you're looking forward to a lot of people coming from sort of the UK and Ireland, which led me to my question. What's the metal fandom scene like in Spain, in Barcelona, in Catalonia as a whole? Is there a big passion for it? Because I mean, like, going to a festival that's progressive and math rock and post metal, it's a very, I wouldn't say obscure necessarily, but it's a very niche audience that you're sort of going for. What's the representation of that like in Spain?
It's good. I mean, we've reached we had around 1,500 people per day in 2019, which is still a good numbers. We had, over the past, we do have rock fests, metal fests, and progressive fests in summer. There's enough people to make it look good, and obviously, being October in Barcelona, the sky's the limit in terms of people coming from other countries. So it looks good. I mean, all the big tours in terms of metal, bands drop by Barcelona. It's very close to Europe, which makes logistics easier for all the bands. So it looks good. It looks promising.
That's fantastic. I was having a look through the sort of website over the last couple of days and sort of constructed some ideas. One thing that really sort of stuck out to me: how have you managed to charge just €85 for this 3-day experience? How have you managed to do that? The logistics that must have gone into that. I was thinking, all right, okay, 3 days, few bands over there. It's going to be 100, 120, 130, 140. How have you managed to condense the price down? How have you? Well, it's a miracle.
It should be 120. This is an internal fight we somehow and sometimes have, between members of the team, fights. It's not fights, it's a discussion. Well, we've always been trying to keep the price as low as possible to be able to bring as many people, to the festival. Our aim is not to make money. Nobody's ever seen €1 in 10 years. The core team has never gotten any money. If there is any benefits from an edition, it goes back to the tin for the next edition. And so, some of us always love to call ourselves, a good bunch of losers, which, meaning yeah, we don't want to make money. We want to bring a special festival to people like us. We want to be the festival we would love to go to. And obviously, the festival you would love to go to is also one you can afford. So, I mean, it's hard to make numbers make sense when it's so cheap, because obviously the bar is, the beer and the drinks are pretty cheap as well. So everything is according to our ethics and idea to make it affordable. So yeah, it's tough, because every 4-day pass you sell, it's 85, and it should be probably 110, 120. Still, the prices will go up a bit at the end of the month, but I think the 4-day pass is going to be 95, top, and day tickets between 25 and 35. So still, I mean, there are bands that are worth the price of the daily ticket just themselves.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
say Cult of Luna, the Fridays, Cult of Luna is probably worth 35 euros just alone. Lingua Notes, Annabelle Household, for Godspeed You, Black. So many bands are worth the price of the tickets themselves. But yeah, that's what AMFest is. And also we allow people younger than 23 years old to get in for free. I don't know if you knew this. It's always been something, from the label, for the concerts that the label organizes. So we've brought this to the festival as well. So if you're younger than 23 years old, there is no pre-sale. You just have to go to the gates, and if it's not sold out, you can get in for free if you bring your ID with you, and you can show us that you're younger than 23. We do this because we know that metal, rock, and everything we work with are not trending right now amongst youngsters. Probably urban music and other kinds of music are more important right now. So we want to bring them closer to us and show them what other kind of music are. And maybe next year they are 24 and they will come paying. And so we try to keep our public alive somehow.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. It's lovely that you're sort of doing that option. I mean, like when you get into, when you want to go to a festival, you sort of 2021, 22, the price is the big drawback, isn't it? You've got the time, you've got the passion, you've got the availability, but it's just the money. If you can able to sort of have that snowball effect where they're coming back every single year and sort of that's increasing over time, that's brilliant for you long term. We should have a look at this. This festival lineup is just amazing for the music they're sort of putting together. There's some bands that are like friends of the podcast that we absolutely love, like Svalbard, Paul Bear, Cult of Luna. Death Haven are just like a legendary band that you've just managed to just get in. This is fucking phenomenal. Lingering Nota. Was there a band that you were particularly proud of getting for the lineup this year? Was there oh my God, where I get to run a festival where these guys are playing?
Well, it's easy to mention. Cult of Luna, they've been headlining this festival for 2 years, but it never happened. So we've always had there for 2 years. So we're really looking forward to having them. And then, personally, as a band we've been after for 10 years, been able to bring them is Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Many of us grew up and, fall in love with instrumental rock thanks to them and others. And it's difficult to mention just a couple, but I'd probably say these two. And all the bands in the lineup mean something to us. This is just, it's a festival that if you had told us when we began 10 years ago that one day we would be able to, see in the lineup Godspeed You, Black Emperor, Cult of Luna, Death Heaven, Annabelle Household, Carpenter Brut, blah, blah, blah. So, we wouldn't have believed it, honestly.
No, it's an extraordinary achievement. You see it sort of growing year on year. Do you see Lafarga being the centre of the AM Festival over the next 2 or 3 years? Is it an individual sort of solution for this time? Because I know you've changed the venue this year. Do you see this as the base moving forward, La Hospitalet?
It's a mid-long term plan. I mean, they've been very kind to us. They've welcomed us very warmly. They've doing everything easy for us. And the good thing is, it's such a great big space that we can customize it and, make it, as small, medium, or big as we want. So even if which I doubt, we were to grow even more over the next years, we can do it there because, we still got, squared meters to go before the venue is, finishes. So it's a mid-long-term plan without any doubts, yes.
That's fantastic. Is it far away from Barcelona? Is it? I know you said it's on the outskirts. How far? Is it easy to get to?
Absolutely. The metro station is 5 minutes walk. You got tons of, buses. Depending on the area of Barcelona you live in, it's as close as it was the previous venue. Mm-hmm. So from the very city center, there's a 20 minutes ride by metro. So very well communicated. Bars, restaurants, hotels. It's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds ideal. I love the idea that you're doing it in such like a historic city as well. Like you always find out these massive metal festivals that are just like in random fields and stuff. I just love the idea that you've got like one of the real cultural capitals of Europe, and then you've still got something going on like that just inside. So if you're a visitor, you can still do all the tourist bits. You can still come in. You can still have a full weekend, see the bands, and come back out and do all this other stuff. It is truly phenomenal. I mean, now that it's taken sort of a couple of years to sort of come together with everything like that, were there any sort of pandemic specific challenges that you've had to sort of overcome in recent years? Are there bands that you've had to sort of put on the back burner and sort of reorganize and reshift? Because I mean, like 3 years is a long time to put a festival together. I can't even imagine the process that this has been for you guys.
Well, we've lost some bands from the original lineup because obviously they reorganized their tours and we've missed them. So there were 2-3 bands with love, and I cannot mention that were supposed to be in the lineup and are not eventually because of the change of plans. And internally was keeping the lights and the fire going on because you sometimes don't see the lights at the end of the tunnel. So we've came to a point where we asked ourselves, is this ever going to happen again? So we're now we've been putting everything in motion again a few weeks ago. And it's challenging because, again, we don't make nobody makes a living out of the festival. So, you're trying to, carry other projects on at the same time as you're, looking after the festival, because that's, you make economically, financially speaking, because we make a living out of the festival in terms of, satisfaction, emotions, and, happiness, but that doesn't really pay bills.
No, of course.
So you at the same time have to, it's challenging, but, we're on it. And, every time we look at the lineup, the strengths come back like very, very, very strongly, because it's our dream lineup. Honestly, I could not imagine it being different. Also, I don't know when this is going to be shared with the public, but there is a small change in the lineup that's going to be announced on the 10th of August, or has been announced the 10th of August. I don't know where we're going out with this. So unfortunately, Meat Puppets will not make it to the festival because they have cancelled the UK and Europe tour. So
it's a shame.
It's a shame because it was a way for many of us. I'm wearing a Pearl Jam t-shirt. Many of us are very 90s fans, so having Meat Puppets with us, where it was one of the ways of being as close as possible to the 90s. But the great news is one of our good friends, and I'm pretty sure good friends of yours as well. Maybe she will. Are joining.
Terrific.
So yeah. It's going to be announced, or it's been announced a few, on August the 10th. So good news for our tangent lovers as well.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. Is it when you have a situation like that, you can find a great band like Maybe She Will just to sort of slot in? That's fantastic. You mentioned at the start of the festival, you talked about the history, and you said that this started as a one-off event, and then it became like, oh, we'll do it next year because it went well, and then we'll do it next year because it went well. At what point did you actually realize, oh shit, we can do this every year?
Well, I think from the second year on, it became clear that there was will of the people to carry on. The answer from fans was good. then it comes a point when you need to make, to take decisions in terms of, are we staying in the same venue? Are we hiring the venue where we do not run the bar, which means, your budget will always be limited to tickets and merchandising, or we go to a venue where we can actually run the bar, and that makes, the budget increase, and you stop being a 3 days of shows in a venue, and you actually become a festival. Because the first years we were hiring this amazing venue called Apollo. I'm pretty sure it's worldwide famous, and it was great to work there. The venue is centric, it's beautiful, it sounds great, people working there are great, but we were very limited in terms of growth capacity, because you don't run the bar, and the space is limited. You cannot have a huge merchandising stand, or bring some brands in to do some. So when we really made a tough decision was to leave Apollo and source a venue where we could turn into a festival as we know it. And yeah, so this is going to be the third actually, edition of AMFest being a festival rather than gigs in a venue for 3 days.
Well, that's interesting. Has that made things easy? That transition, has that made things easier for you, knowing it's going to be like a consistent festival kind of experience, that consistent thread and that type of stuff? Or has that presented some of its own challenges alongside it as well?
It's just different. I've always said, I remember, when we were organizing the first editions, we were, running up and down, stressed, and, and it was the hardest thing at the time. And then you look back when you are in a venue, I always say this now looks like a birthday party, what we were doing before. So obviously it changes completely, the focus and the points of view of the event, because we went, even in terms of budget, which allows you to book other kind of band. We would have never been able to book Cool Soul Luna or Godspeed or Carpenter Brut, or, if we had stayed in a venue, because that's just impossible. So I personally think it's way better, because you can actually do many more things that you were not allowed to do staying in a venue.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that. It's probably better for you long term as well. You can sort of establish one sort of consistent place, and that helps you out moving forward as well. So I'm going to get you out of here on this. Moving forward, then, you talked about La Farga as a short to medium term plan next couple of years. What does the future look like for AMFest consistently? Where would you like to be if we're having this conversation in 5 years? Maybe there's a 20th anniversary or 15th anniversary show on down the line. Is there any ambitions left that you want to tick off? You mentioned this has already been your dream lineup. Is there any bands out there you want to be talking to? Is there any situations that you'd like to be in moving forward with this festival?
I'd sign to be here in 5 years and saying for the 5th year in a row, this is our dream lineup. And being at Farga, and that would be just perfect. That would mean that, we're comfortable, and the festival, financially makes sense, because again, with those prices, how difficult it can be to make, in and outs make sense. So I'd sign for, being here in 5 years, speaking to you, Sam, again, and saying, then, the bands we would love to talk to, it depends if instead of me, it was one of the other, 10 members of the core team, they would say, different names. Obviously, Mogwai has always been in our, in our dreams, because many of us just got close to this kind of music thanks to them. Godspeed, Tortoise would be, but Godspeed is as close as we can get to, in terms of where we come from, to where we could ever wish to get.
That's a beautiful thing to be able to say, isn't it? That you've grown up loving a sort of industry, loving a genre, loving a piece of music, a type of music, and you're able to organise a festival where those bands are actually coming to play. It's a beautiful thing to be able to say you do. I look forward to the next time we have this conversation. Hopefully we can cross a few off the list. Mau, it's been an absolute pleasure discussing you. So we've got AMFest running October the 6th to the 9th. Anything else? Imagine that you've just sort of skipped to the end of this interview. What should an average listener know about AMFest that we might not have covered before we get you out of here?
I think we covered pretty much, everything. I would like to see as many, British and Irish flying down to Barcelona in October, making the most out of this beautiful lineup, beautiful city, affordable prices. Beer is good and cheap. We're going to have also local beers and craft beers and, good food trucks, local stuff. Festival thought, made and run with, love, because that's the only thing that and passion that move us. There's no other reason behind it. So would love to see you guys, down as many as possible.
That's wonderful. Thank you so very much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Thank you.